Chapter 561, Suit. After the broadcast about the evening reception party, everyone started to make preparations. In his room, Yue Hengyu dug out clothes from his storage ring. He held each selection in front of a mirror, imagining himself in them, not willing to settle for anything less than perfection. Finally, he found what he was looking for. Yes. It's got to be this one. No one will be able to take their eyes off me. His chosen outfit, a pure white suit set with his holy angel clans crest embroidered into the collar. From the jacket, trousers, shirt, belt, bow tie, to even the shoes, nothing broke free from the thematic use of white. The only splash of color was the gold embroidery that complemented his luscious blonde locks. This was the handicraft of a master tailor. I'll definitely be the most dazzling person there tonight, he said, a prideful grin on his face. He took his time dressing up, careful not to coax a wrinkle from the fine fabric. He posed in front of the mirror. Damn. I didn't know it was possible to be this handsome. I'm so handsome I almost want to pull myself into a dark corner and caress this handsome god that is me. Give this perky, Titus a squeeze. Yue Hengyu slipped a hand under his finely pressed shirt, lifting it up, and look at these muscles. Wait. One more thing. He adjusted his bow tie. With a flick of his hand, he summoned a decorative golden pocket square, folded it neatly, and slipped it into his chest pocket. There. Perfect. With a giant smile on his face, Yue Hengyu left his room. The moment he walked out the door, Xu Shaoan came out of hers that faced opposite his. They were taken aback for a moment, staring at each other in silence. She felt as if she were blinded by his radiance. Yue Hengyu was undoubtedly a handsome boy, nearly as tall as Tang Wuling with a slightly more slender figure. Her heart skipped a beat at the charming smile and noble aura he exuded in his regal suit. Yue Hengyu similarly stared at Xu Shaoan blankly. She wore a dress that only went down to her knees. Coincidentally, her dress was sparkling white and gently draped over her shoulders. Along the bottom were tiny and golden decorative stars. Generally, soul masters tended to choose clothes that resembled their martial souls, and neither Yue Hengyu nor Xu Shaoan were exceptions. To their astonishment, however, their outfits perfectly matched one another to the point that they looked like a couple. You're really pretty today, Yue Hengyu said sincerely. A hint of crimson rose to Xu Shaoan's cheeks. Thank you. Hey, who called me? The door of the adjacent cabin swung open. Enter Shi. In contrast to Yue Hengyu and Xu Shaoan, he was dressed in a jet black tuxedo, trousers, and bow tie. The only article of clothing breaking that trend was his dress shirt, white like the color of freshly fallen snow. To be honest, Shi was as good looking as Yue Hengyu, despite his less impressive height and sharper features. He gave off the impression of a dark prince upon first glance, a brooding noble with a chilling breeze blowing at his back. Granted, he didn't open his mouth. This side of him surfaced once again now that he was all dressed up. Yuan Yui walked out of her room next. She was disguised as a man still, a black dress shirt with red trousers her outfit of choice. Although she wasn't as handsome as the other boys while disguised, she still looked striking in her outfit. Coupled with her knowledge of her fallen angel spirit soul, her friends thought she was even cooler. Xu Shaoan smiled. Yuanan, if you had a rose in your mouth too, I think I might just fall in love with you. Yuanan Yui glanced at her, then Yue Hengyu. Since when have you two been together? Huh? No way. Xu Shaoan's face went beet red and she ran off. Glancing at Shi, Yue Hengyu puffed out his chest. Shi, I didn't think you'd be so good looking once you put in some effort. Shi straightened his back. He grinned. Well, duh. Yue Hengyu let out a soft sigh. Alas, you still can't compare with my magnificence. Before Shi could retort, he turned around left. The hell did you mean by that? Shi chased after him with a scowl. Stop right there. I can't believe that bastard. And in front of Yuanan too. Yuanan Yui shook her head helplessly and followed after them slowly. A rose, huh? I like roses, especially red ones. A bit later, Yizinglin and Shu Lizzie walked out of their respective rooms simultaneously. When the two saw each other, they paused. Shu Lizzie hadn't changed into formal attire at all and was still wearing the iconic green uniform of Shrek Academy. Woefully unaware of how underdressed he was, he met Yizinglin with a goofy smile. On the other hand, Yizinglin wore a deep green, well-fitted dress that erred on the conservative side. It truly complemented her cold aura and beautiful face. Big sis Yizinglin, you look so pretty. Without even realizing it, he gulped. Why haven't you changed yet? Yizinglin asked. Me? I don't have anything fancy. Shu Lizzie scratched his chin. If this isn't enough, I guess I'll just not go. It's fine. You're going. Just give me a minute. Yizinglin immediately ducked back into her room to Shu Lizzie's confusion. A self-mocking smile formed on Shu Lizzie's lips. With how fat I am, there's no way I'd look good in anything fancy. A while passed before Yizinglin returned from her room. Shu Lizzie's eyes went wide when he saw what she was now wearing. Big sis Yinglin, let's go. Yizinglin pinched his chubby cheek and patted him on the shoulder. Then she walked proudly and gracefully toward the party as if it weren't Shrek Academy's green uniform she wore, but an elegant dress. Swallowing once more, Shu Lizzie hastened to keep up with her. Big sis Yinglin, I'm sorry. What are you saying sorry for? It's not like you wanted to be this fat. This is all because of your martial soul. Besides, you're cute when you're that chubby. You gotta be like a bear. Laze around cutely, warm to hug, and a great pillow to nap on. Then if we starve in the winter, become an emergency food source. And if there's danger, stand up and show the world how fierce you are. I'd feel really safe if you become like that. Oh. Then I'll become your bear. Big sis Yinglin, do you like polar bears more or black bears? Or maybe brown bears? I like silly bears. Oh. I'm already silly. Hee. The SLS Seafarers banquet hall was on the second floor of the ship. The hall, easily able to accommodate 1,000 people, was still packed. For the sake of fostering friendly relations, all of the dining tables and chairs were removed, leaving only a few cocktail tables. Snacks and beverages of every sort were gathered there, more than enough to satisfy whatever cravings possible. The hall a dazzling sight to behold. This was the arrangement that the organizers from the Douluo and Douluo delegation came to after much consideration and planning. Both sides wanted to build a good relationship with the other, so they designed the layout of the hall to encourage intermingling. As the diplomats from both sides began to filter in with their beautiful dresses and sharp suits, the whole scene grew noisy with excitement. Everyone was handed glasses of sparkling wine to grow a festive mood. Out of Shrek Academy's group, Yue Hengyu was the first person to arrive at the entrance to the hall. He straightened his chest and put on his most charming smile, and he sauntered in. Chapter 562. The banquet begins. Yue Hengyu's flashy outfit and dashing looks immediately drew the attention of everyone, but that attention only lasted a moment. He was but one of the countless good-looking people who had dressed up today. No matter how good he was at peacocking, he was still only 16 years old. He lacked the seductive charm of maturity. Yue Hengyu, I dare you to repeat that to my face. Shi said as he finally caught up to Yue Hengyu. His raised voice drew curious gazes back their way. Yue Hengyu turned to face Shi, a radiant smile on his face. Darling, what did you want me to say? Shishi's fury was instantly smothered by the chills running through his body. I don't know you. He pivoted in place, grabbed a drink from a nearby waiter's tray. Off he went. Yuan Yui and Xu Shaoan entered the hall just in time to catch Yue Hengyu and Shishi's small scene. As Shishi scurried away from Yue Hengyu, he caught sight of Yuan Yui and swiftly approached her. Yue Hengyu just keeps belittling me. Isn't he such an asshole? Don't involve me in whatever's going on between you two, she answered. Xu Shaoan giggled. What a cute couple. Shishi was nowhere near as thick-skinned as Yue Hengyu, so he blushed at Xu Shaoan's prodding. Scratching his cheek, he bashfully glanced at Yuan Yui. See, even Shaoan says we should be together. Screw off. Yuan Yui rolled her eyes at him, swiftly leaving the scene. Heart falling, Shishi turned and gave Yue Hengyu the finger, but Yue Hengyu just responded with a charming smile. One so sickening sweet it coaxed goosebumps from his skin. In fear for his chastity, Shishi bolted after Yuan Yui. Now that Shishi was gone, Yue Hengyu slid into position in front of Xu Shaoan. Pretty lady, would you care to be my dance partner tonight? Xu Shaoan giggled. How do you know there's going to be a dance? Yue Hengyu chuckled. This is a banquet, so of course there'll be one. How about it? Will you be my partner tonight? Sure. Yue Hengyu snapped. Fabulous. You're such a great girl. Xu Shaoan nodded enthusiastically. That's right. I'm the complete opposite of your ugly mug. Yue Hengyu cracked a wry smile. How about you dull your sharp tongue tonight? Otherwise. He leaned forward. As he inched closer to her face, Xu Shaoan bent backward to keep them from touching, to the point where he was amazed. Otherwise what? Xu Shaoan stared at him with defiant eyes. Otherwise. His own eyes reflected a rare sincerity. Do you really think I'm ugly? Okay, fine. Hurry up and get off me. You look fine, Xu Shaoan said, unsure why she was so flustered. Yue Hengyu pulled Xu Shaoan up by the waist as he straightened his posture. You still haven't answered my question, he said quietly. Xu Shaoan snorted. I don't like playboys. How would you know I'm a playboy? Yue Hengyu said as he rubbed his nose. The look Xu Shaoan flashed him was filled with ridicule. You know, the first time I saw you, you were hitting on Yuanan. So you're telling me you're not a playboy? Eh? That doesn't count. I thought she was an evil soul master. It was all part of my plan to trip her up. Actually, I've never even had a girlfriend. Bet you didn't expect that. Yue Hengyu said, growing bashful at the end. How old are you now? You're just 16. According to Federation law, you're a minor until you turn 18. It's immoral for you to think about such lewd things this young. And now you're trying to get a girlfriend. You should be morally disciplined by society. She scoffed. You're asking me if I would expect a delinquent like you to be so chaste? They had forgotten. Xu Shaoan was the greatest actress of them all. After her little speech, Xu Shaoan wiped the look of disgust off her face and replaced it with a sincere smile. I know you're in puberty, but don't let your hormones cloud your mind. Then she made to leave. Yue Hengyu gaped at her retreating figure. What the hell was that? She's just acting out a drama with my life now. I never knew she was so impressive. I can't believe I actually thought she was charmed by my looks. By now, most of the participants had entered the hall. As representatives of Douluo and Star Dou, each and every one of them was a renowned figure within their profession. People from every background could be found, but in terms of age, the students from Shrek Academy were definitely the youngest. Elder Kai soon walked into the hall followed by Wu Zhangkong. She wore a white dress, elegant designs embroidered into every cut. It gave off the scent of a dream, as though she were glowing with pale white light. Her appearance instantly drew countless eyes, though her dress was hardly flashy. Rather, it was the quiet light radiating off her body that captured everyone's attention. Wu Zhangkong found his place in a corner of the hall, slowly sipping at a glass of iced water. Not one for crowded places. He wouldn't have come if not for Elder Kai's orders. Dressed in his usual attire of a white robe over white shirt and pants, he made the standard pieces of clothing seem more exquisite. Even when hidden in a corner, Wu Zhangkong attracted numerous gazes. And in the few minutes he had been there, 7 women had already tried their chances with him. He politely exchanged pleasantries with each one, but he always firmly turned them down. Even after being turned down, however, those women braved his cold aura and hovered around him, casting passionate gazes at Wu Zhangkong from time to time. In their eyes, he was a knight in splendid white. Disregarding the heated looks his way, Wu Zhangkong kept his eyes on his students. He spotted Shishi chasing after Yuan and Yui, and Xu Shaoan and Yue Hengyu putting on a show. A moment later, he saw Yingling and Xu Lizzy walk in dressed in their uniforms. Although the organizers of the party had asked everyone to attend in formal attire, it wasn't a strictly enforced rule. Yingling and Xu Lizzy hadn't been stopped once and were smoothly led into the hall. They immediately went to find a corner. More specifically, a corner with food to stuff their faces with. It didn't take long for them to find one, and Xu Lizzy started by offering Yingling a pastry. She refused. It was a shake of the head. However, with a simple smile on his face, he didn't continue to push her and popped the pastry into his mouth. Where's Tang Wulian and Gu Yue? The party has already started. Wu Zhangkong scanned the crowd with a pensive look on his face. His subtle frown sent shivers down the spines of his many admirers and deepened their obsession with him. Good evening everyone and welcome to the banquet. I am Star Dou's Foreign Affairs Minister, Sima Langshao. As soon as he said this, Sima Langshao bowed. A tall and handsome man with blonde hair, he had a voice with a magnetic allure, a force of inspiration for some. With his voice alone he easily brightened the mood of everyone in the hall. I'm very excited to have friends of every background from Douluo here with us tonight. Let's celebrate and foster friendships. We've prepared a few small contests tonight for choosing the following: the best dressed man and lady, the prince and belle of the ball, and the best couple. The winners will receive awards from our Star Dou's delegation. Once the words left his lips, waiters and waitresses streamed into the room holding trays with a wide assortment of drinks. The party was kicking into full drive. Chapter 563, stunning. In the center of the banquet hall stood a circular dance floor spanning 50 meters wide. Members of the Star Dou's delegation climbed up it and declared the start of the party. The moment music started playing, a couple entered the hall and a spotlight descended upon them. It drew everyone's eyes. A fairy in silver and white, so beautiful one would fear that with a blink and she would disappear, merely a figment of a dream. This was the girl who had just walked into the hall with her partner. Her black hair gently brushed past her shoulders. She carried herself in a delicate manner, and although not particularly pretty, she had a noble and graceful air. The music stilled. Upon closer inspection, her hands were wrapped in a pair of silver evening gloves, subtle patterns running along their length. Her dress stopped short of her knees and revealed a pair of slender, fair legs, seemingly cut from marble. Her high heels, also silver, sparkled like crystal, and as she walked forward the tapping filled the hall, counting down to a splendid occasion. Escorting her was a handsome young man. He stood tall and straight, his figure slender yet muscular, with perfectly broad shoulders. His jet black hair was combed back and fell in supple waves. A pearl white shirt stood out against the black of his trousers, and a black bow tie complemented his purple tuxedo. He cut a dashing figure, despite the hint of immaturity left on his face. If the girl next to him was the full moon over the starry sea, then he was the radiant golden sun. Murmurs broke out among the bystanders, praising the beautiful couple. The spotlights were manually controlled and had coincidentally landed on the two, but it was so fitting that the operators couldn't bear to readjust them. In that moment, they were the prince and princess of the banquet. The couple was precisely Tang Wulian and Gu Yue. Standing atop the platform at the back of the hall, Sima Langshao had a clear view of the two as they had walked in. He was certain that they were both from Douluo since he was familiar with the faces of the Star Dou's delegation. It was essential for a diplomat to have a good memory. It looks like we have another strong candidate for our prizes tonight. Welcome to the banquet. May I ask which part of Douluo you are from? Tang Wulian found his outfit uncomfortably tight and restrictive. In his everyday life, he wore whatever was comfortable to blacksmith and cultivate. Yet despite how restrictive he found the tuxedo, he could feel himself standing taller in it. Gu Yue had locked arms with him as if only natural when they entered the hall. As the spotlight had landed on them, Tang Wulian was taken by surprise. But not a stranger to surprises. He quickly recovered and answered Sima Langshao. We're from Shrek Academy. His voice was calm and pleasant, loud enough that everyone in the hall could hear it. The spotlight finally left Tang Wulian and Gu Yue. As the music grew louder, people made their way to the dance floor. Meanwhile, the waiter staff carried a myriad of gourmet dishes into the hall. Wow. Captain, you can't do this. Xu Shaoan said, bouncing toward Tang Wulian and Gu Yue. Tang Wulian tilted his head, brow raised. Why can't I do what? Xu Shaoan giggled. If you dress so handsomely, I'm afraid I'll fall in love with you. Tang Wulian rolled his eyes. Please. You look really pretty today too. Xu Shaoan pulled on Gu Yue's free arm. Big sis Yue. Is this your work? I refuse to believe Captain can dress himself up like this. Aren't you afraid of other girls stealing him away though? When I looked around earlier, I saw a whole bunch of young ladies staring at him like a meal. Gu Yue chuckled. I'm not afraid. Tang Wulian looked at her helplessly. They were at the age where they couldn't help but think about members of the opposite sex. Even Tang Wulian, level-headed as he was, had noticed far more about girls recently. If he wasn't so busy with cultivating, he might have more interest in dating like the others. But he restrained himself and refused to allow any distractions into his life. For the sake of finding his missing parents, he had to become as strong and fast as possible. The other students of Shrek Academy walked over to greet Tang Wulian and Gu Yue. Yue Hengyu wore a wry smile on his face as he compared himself with Tang Wulian. It was undoubtedly his defeat. Tang Wulian was simply too handsome to contend with, and even a couple centimeters taller. There was no helping with either of these things. Tang Wulian, you're gonna lose all your friends at this rate, you know. Yue Hengyu said, pouting. Tang Wulian rolled his eyes. Oh. And you have a lot of friends? Yue Hengyu clicked his tongue as he stared at Tang Wulian's fake smile. Then he snorted. Fine, I'll leave your ass alone. Just as Yue Hengyu turned around, he met several familiar faces. The students from the Imperial Star Dou Academy, except this time, their numbers seemed to have multiplied. Every one of them stared at Yue Hengyu with eyes full of disdain. This guy sure knows how to stir up trouble. Tang Wulian chuckled. In a few quick steps, he was in front of Yue Hengyu to face the students of the other academy. Hello. Let me introduce myself formally. I'm the captain of the students from Shrek Academy on this exchange trip. My name is Tang Wulian, he said, extending his right hand. This was a formal meeting between students of both delegations, so it was Tang Wulian's responsibility as captain of the team to make first contact. A tall young man about 19 years old stepped forward from the Imperial Star Dou Academy's group. He stretched a hand toward Tang Wulian. Hello. I'm the captain of the Imperial Star Dou Academy students sent on this trip, Luo Qinghan. As the two shook hands, Tang Wulin felt immense pressure clamping down on his hand. If he yelped in front of everyone at this banquet, he would undoubtedly lose face for himself and Shrek Academy. So, Tang Wulin returned the favor. A radiant smile blossomed on his face as he said, I'm happy to meet you all. I hope we learn a lot from each other in the future. Luo Qinghan's complexion paled instantly. It felt as if his hand had been sucked into a meat grinder. Tang Wulin continued shaking hands quickly, forcing the bones of Luo Qinghan's hand to grind against each other with each jerking motion. The pain was excruciating, but Luo Qinghan knew better than to cry out. He could only grit his teeth and endure. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, running down his pale skin. The students of Shrek Academy were all watching with grins on their faces. They could tell exactly what was going on between Tang Wulin and Luo Qinghan, and they knew their captain had the upper hand. There was no one in all of Shrek Academy's court that dared challenge Tang Wulin to a contest of raw, physical strength. Such an endeavor would simply be foolish. After a couple more shakes, Tang Wulin finally let go of Luo Qinghan's hand and gave him a curt nod, brushing right past him. Before Tang Wulin could move further, two students of the Imperial Star Dou Academy rushed forward and stopped him. Pretending as if he didn't see them, Tang Wulin walked right through, knocking them away with his shoulders. The rest of his teammates followed right behind him in the path he created. Luo Qinghan didn't say anything to stop the Shrek Academy students. He just ducked his head down and stuck his right hand into his pocket, desperately trying to control its shaking. Shit, that hurts. That brat is strong. Chapter 564. The Dance Floor. The students of the Imperial Star Dou Academy had underestimated Tang Wulin since he was clearly much younger than them and wore a kind smile on his face. However, that smile was a mask that hid the tyrannical strength within him. Without saying a single word, Tang Wulin plowed right through their formation. There was nothing they could do in retaliation, but they did not dare cause a disturbance during the banquet. In this situation, whoever lashed out first was the loser. Unlike the rest, the four female Imperial Star Dou Academy students looked at Tang Wulin with inquisitive gazes. Even they were not immune to Tang Wulin's handsomeness. How long will I have to eat before I'm full? Tang Wulin asked anxiously as he glanced at the poultry snacks on the cocktail tables. Delicate pastries and desserts were arranged on each table, but they were next to nothing in his eyes. It would take him a lifetime to satisfy his stomach if these were all he had to eat. It's gonna be hard to fill our bellies. Shu Lizzie chuckled. I've already swept 3 tables clean. How are people supposed to be happy if they're hungry? Tang Wulin scratched his cheek nervously. His cultivation was closely tied to eating food. The more nutritious the food he consumed, the stronger his blood essence became. As his blood essence grew stronger, it placed more pressure on his soul power and encouraged it to condense. As a result, he had never been worried about the strength of his soul power, only its quantity. He also understood that part of the reason why his soul power grew so slowly was because it was constantly being compressed. Tang Wulin had once asked Wu Zhangkong if it was good that his soul power was being compressed. He had been given a simple explanation in return. To progress beyond their 5th soul ring, all soul masters need to compress their soul power. The earlier he began this process, the purer his soul power would be. He may start facing difficulties now, but in the future he would reap the benefits and have an advantage over his peers. The quality of his soul power would be far better. Although it would slow his progress to becoming a battle armor master, there was no doubt that the compression of his soul power was beneficial to him. Tang Wulin had found relief in Wu Zhangkong's explanation, and from then onward he took it to heart, focusing on the quality over quantity when cultivating. Recently he also noticed that, after breaking the 4th seal, his combat style had grown rougher and more direct. He tended to favor brute force and used brutal attacks to overwhelm his opponents. Such intense combat got his blood boiling and drummed up the domineering power that slumbered within his blood essence. He knew that it was his blood essence that caused this shift in combat styles. What do we do, Captain? Shu Lizzie asked anxiously, rousing Tang Wulin from his thoughts. Tang Wulin sighed. Even a fly has meat on it. We'll just settle for eating as much as we can. It's not like it's always going to be like this. We can handle starving for one day. Tomorrow we can figure out how to wrestle up some fish. Shu Lizzie was taken aback. But the sea has marine soul beasts in it. Won't it be dangerous to go catching fish? I was joking. Tang Wulin laughed dryly. We can use fishing rods. Then Tang Wulin heard a deep voice, one that sounded was all too familiar. He turned in the direction it had come from, and as soon as he did, his eyes went wide like discs. There, standing in pristine white chef's attire, was a man. He was in the process of delivering a tray of food to a nearby table. It was the sect master of the body sect and divine grade mega pilot, Mu Yi. You Uncle Mu? Tang Wulin stammered, gawking at the man. What's he doing here? Even though he's here as a diplomatic representative, he shouldn't be playing the part of a mere chef, right? Mu Yi laughed slyly, as if he had been caught in the middle of committing a crime. I'm a qualified chef, he said. In fact, I own a series of restaurants all over Douluo. I can be considered a representative of Douluo's culinary arts. That aside, what's your cabin number? Tang Wulin told Mu Yi what he wanted to know and the man beamed. Great. Don't worry about eating your fill right now. I'll stop by later tonight and cook something up for you. Then he looked Tang Wulin up and down and nodded in satisfaction. You look good. Before Tang Wulin could even try to comprehend what was happening, Mu Yi dashed away, leaving him staring in disbelief. The sect master of the body sect, titled Douluo, divine grade mega pilot, and quite possibly a 4-word battle armor master, was acting as a mere chef in this cultural exchange between continents. What's he doing? Tang Wulin couldn't help but wonder as he recalled his last encounter with Mu Yi. Is he here because of me? In truth, Mu Yi really was here because of Tang Wulin. After their last meeting, Mu Yi had plenty of time to reflect on the situation and ultimately came to terms with reality. A genius perfectly suited for the body sect like Tang Wulin was miraculously rare. He could not afford to let Tang Wulin go, especially when the fate of the body sect was at stake. Loyalty was important, but he could worry about that after ensuring the survival of his sect's legacy. If he didn't find a successor for the body sect, its legacy, which had endured for millennia, would be lost. At that point, its rules would be protecting no one. In the past, Zen who had told Mu Yi that, as long as nothing terrible happened, Tang Wulin had an 80% chance of becoming a divine blacksmith in the future. With a talented heir like him, the body sect would never have to worry about procuring high-grade refined metals once he matured. Furthermore, Tang Wulin's character had already been tested time and time again. His ordeals against the evil soul masters alone were proof of that, but his status as a Shrek Academy student left no doubts about his virtue. Anyone who entered Shrek Academy, especially someone capable of becoming a class president, was an outstanding individual. Mu Yi had been keeping a close eye on Tang Wulin for a while now. He had even been watching when the young man led his team to defeat the 3rd grade. It was then that Mu Yi resolved to induct Tang Wulin into the body sect at any cost. Even if Tang Wulin remained a disciple of the Tang sect alongside that, it would be worth it. This resolve led Mu Yi to use his myriad connections to sneak into the diplomatic mission to Star Luo. Mu Yi had finally disappeared amongst the crowd, yet Tang Wulin still stood there with his brow furrowed. He was quite confused, but he had to admit that it was reassuring to know there was another titled Douluo aboard the ship that had his back. Around Tang Wulin, the banquet continued. Members of both delegations were behaving conservatively since this was the first banquet with both parties in attendance. Only a few people were on the dance floor. Most lingered in the periphery making small talk. A few minutes later, staff members made their way through the hall and stuck number tags on everyone. Excuse me, everyone. Sima Langshao exclaimed. We will now start preparing for the contests. The method we'll be using to choose participants is simple. Both delegations will nominate 5 talented individuals. Once 10 people have been nominated, all of us will vote on them for 5 categories. Handsomest gentleman, most beautiful lady, best dressed man, and best dressed lady, and best dance couple. I won't worry about other details for now, but we are lacking some dancers on the dance floor. I'm sure most of you in both delegations are young men and women, so come on, don't bottle up your youthful passion. Have some fun. Dance. Sima Langshao's words had a bewitching sound to them. Moments after he finished speaking, young men and women swarmed the dance floor. At that moment Tang Wulin was busy stuffing himself alongside Shu Lizzie and the others. They were far from the dance floor. It was then that someone approached him. Do you want to dance? Tang Wulin turned to see Lin Yuhan in a beautiful blue dress. Chapter 565. Follow me. Huh. I don't know how to dance. Tang Wulin waved his hand dismissively at the idea. He had never danced before, nor had the opportunity to learn. It's not hard. How about I teach you? Lin Yuhan said, offering her hand to him. Tang Wulin blinked a few times as he stared at her hand. Before he could react, she grabbed him by the hand and dragged him to the dance floor. Big sis. That girl from Star Luo is taking away Wulin. Xu Shaoan exclaimed, nudging Gu Yue with her elbow. Gu Yue turned. Her eyes zeroed in on Lin Yuhan gripping Tang Wulin's hand as they headed to the dance floor and frowned. What are you going to do, big sis? Xu Shaoan quietly asked. Contrary to Xu Shaoan's expectations, Gu Yue smiled calmly. It's fine. Xu Shaoan smiled as well. Captain Shaw is popular. You better keep a close eye on him. If a girl lets her man get snatched away by another girl, then she only has herself to blame. Yi Xingling nodded in agreement and gave Gu Yue a thumbs up. As for Yuan and Yui, she could only smile wryly at the exchange. Seemingly out of thin air, She popped up next to Yuan and Yui and said, "Don't worry. No matter how pretty other girls are, I'll always be faithful. Get away from me," Yuan and Yui said without batting an eye while the other three girls watched with warm smiles. Back on the dance floor, Tang Wulin realized how helpless it was to throw off Lin Yuhan. As expected of a blacksmith, her large and powerful hands had a vice-like grip on him. In truth, Tang Wulin was quite impressed with her. It was already difficult for men to become blacksmiths, and exponentially harder for women. Blacksmithing was the hardest main profession to advance in, so the fact that she was also a fifth-rank blacksmith at nearly the same age as him served testimony to her sacrifice to get there. Tang Wulin understood all too well how challenging blacksmithing was. The hardships he went through to reach his current level made it all the more obvious that she possessed immense willpower and tenacity. Blacksmithing was a path walked by many, and he was bound to meet many others walking this path. So as reluctant as he was, he didn't fight her anymore and let her take him to the dance floor. Once they found their own little space, Lin Yuhan whirled around to face Tang Wulin without letting go of his hand. She raised the hand that held his and put her other hand on his shoulder. "Just follow my movements. I'll lead. Now put your free hand on my waist," Lin Yuhan said softly. "Huh?" Tang Wulin stared at her blankly. He had never been so close to a girl before except for Gu Yue and Naya. He subconsciously followed her instructions and placed a hand at her waist. When he felt her slim waist, his heartbeat quickened and crimson warmth rose to his cheeks, highlighting his obvious lack of experience with women. Lin Yuhan giggled at how stiff Tang Wulin was acting. "I'm going to start now." She slid her left foot to the side and brought Tang Wulin deeper into the dance floor. With her hands, she exerted strength to guide him along the proper movements. Although Tang Wulin did not know how to dance, he had learned the ghost shadow perplexing step, so he had a good foundation for footwork. His movements were a bit sluggish, but he managed to keep up with Lin Yuhan to form an awkward but acceptable dance. Lin Yuhan gradually picked up the pace as Tang Wulin grew more familiar with the routine. Soon, he found the rhythm and was moving in tune with the music. While the two clearly weren't the best dancers on the floor, they were a handsome man and beautiful lady and easily attracted countless eyes. As Lin Yuhan led Tang Wulin along, a smile blossomed on her face. "You're real heavy even though you don't look fat at all." Indeed, Tang Wulin's weight was wholly inconsistent with his body figure. His muscle and bone density was far greater than the average person and granted him a weight that would astonish people. Tang Wulin smiled wryly. "I'm not a good dancer, but I can tell you're really good at this. How about you visit me at the Imperial-style Luo Academy when we arrive?" Tang Wulin chuckled. "Sure. You guys have some unique perspectives on blacksmithing that I'd love to hear about. Maybe I'll learn a thing or two." Lin Yuhan rolled her eyes. "You're still focused on learning? You're already good enough as you are. Let me tell you, I'm the best blacksmith we got there, and I'm still no match for you." "Really? Just what sort of training have you been doing? When did you start blacksmithing?" "I started learning the fundamentals at 6 years old. My innate strength was high, so I was naturally good at it and I've been forging ever since." Lin Yuhan snorted. "Then you haven't been blacksmithing as long as I have. I started when I was 3. My dad's a blacksmith too. When I was still a baby, he gave me a mini blacksmithing hammer for a toy. Then he kept replacing it with a bigger and bigger hammer as I grew up. You could say I was born with a hammer in hand. I always believed that there's no one in the world that could possibly love blacksmithing more than me until I met you." Tang Wulin's brows shut up in astonishment. While Lin Yuhan spoke lightly, he knew that she must have encountered many hardships growing up as a blacksmith. "Is your dad really strict?" Lin Yuhan's cheek puffed up a bit in a pout, then she slowly nodded. "My teacher couldn't stand seeing how strict my dad was to me, so he brought me with him on this exchange. You have no idea how free I felt this past year. I had so much fun on Douluo that I almost didn't want to leave, especially when I thought about facing my dad." Tang Wulin sighed. "At least you can see your dad. My dad was kidnapped and I haven't seen or heard from him in years. No matter how much I want to see him, I can't. I think you should try to understand your dad a bit more. He's only so strict with you because he wants you to inherit his legacy. You've made it through all these years already, so keep doing your best. I'm sure he'll lighten up when you once you're a Saint Blacksmith." Lin Yuhan blinked a few times at the surprising show of sorrow in Tang Wulin's eyes. "Compared to him, am I actually quite lucky? You really know how to comfort people. I'm sorry for making you think of sad things," Lin Yuhan said. Tang Wulin shook his head. "Don't mind me. I'm just doing my best. I'll definitely find my parents and bring them back one day. It's my goal to reunite my family." "Yeah. I'm sure you will." The song finished and the dancers stopped. Although it was only one short song, Tang Wulin had already grasped the basics of dancing. Tang Wulin quickly withdrew his hand from Lin Yuhan's waist and broke off their linked hands. Lin Yuhan smirked at him. "Wasn't dancing fun? Up for another round?" Tang Wulin hastily waved his hand dismissively. "No, I'm fine. I'm way too nervous to do that again. Didn't you see me staring at my feet the entire time? I was scared I would step on your feet." Lin Yuhan covered her mouth with her hand and giggled. Just as she was about to speak, someone approached behind Tang Wulin. "Excuse me," Gu Yue said to Lin Yuhan, then pulled Tang Wulin away by his arm. Astonishment flickered in Lin Yuhan's eyes, but she managed a strange smile. "Was I intruding?" Gu Yue smiled confidently. "He's my dance partner. He'll be accompanying me for the next dance." Tang Wulin turned to her in astonishment. "When did I agree to that?" Then he saw the dark look she gave him and didn't dare talk back. "Oh." Lin Yuhan didn't say anything else and just smiled, but she did not leave. She simply stood there and watched the two. As the next song began playing, Gu Yue pulled Tang Wulin back to the dance floor. He had no choice but to obey. Lin Yuhan pouted as she watched the two leave. Her hands clenched in tight fists. "Of course there's lots of competition for a good guy like him. I've got to snatch him for myself with my own two hands." Since childhood, Lin Yuhan had spent her days in the monotony of blacksmithing. It was only after spending a year in Douluo that her suppressed wants and desires surfaced. As a byproduct of her heart loosening, her blacksmithing skill had increased as well. As a 4-ring soulmaster, she had the qualifications to call herself a 6th-rank blacksmith. Lin Yuhan had always known that no one was as talented a blacksmith as her in all of Douluo, so now that she met her match in Tang Wulin, she couldn't help but be attracted to him. Although she couldn't fully accept her loss to him in their previous competition, she had to admit that he was a greater genius than her. They were rivals. She had never expected to meet someone she could call a rival, and even surpass her. Since that fateful day, Tang Wulin's determined face, a glistening sweat streak down his forehead, was burned into her memory. Chapter 566, Dance of Passion. From the moment Tang Wulin stepped into the hall, Lin Yuhan had been completely enraptured. She couldn't keep her eyes off his dashing figure. He had everything she wanted in a man and was so charming to her that she had cast away all her reservations and taken the initiative to invite him to dance. While it was normal to harbor a crush on someone, Lin Yuhan was woefully inexperienced in such matters. All she knew was that she wanted to get closer to Tang Wulin. She was confident that she was just as pretty as Gu Yue and also shared an interest in blacksmithing with him. She was certain she had a good shot. It was at that point that the music, which had been lingering in the background, took center stage. Just as Sima Langxiao planned, the song changed. The banquet had begun with a series of slower songs, but this next song had a lively, bumping beat. It started off low but soon swelled with intensity, passion, and excitement. This was exactly what was needed to change the mood and encourage the two delegations to have fun with each other. Gu Yue pulled Tang Wulin onto the dance floor. Just as Tang Wulin was about to speak, Gu Yue stopped and whirled around to face him with sharp eyes. "Gu Yue, I." Right at that moment, the music went into full swing. It drowned out whatever Tang Wulin was saying, and before he could try and repeat himself, Gu Yue took action. She grabbed his right hand and placed it on her waist, then raised his left hand high, back straight. She craned her neck and took off, leading them into a tempestuous whirlwind of a dance. Gu Yue's silver dress billowed outward as they spun, blossoming like a flower. Tang Wulin caught a glimpse of her legs as it did and saw that she wore skin-tight capri pants. The sight of it consumed his thoughts, his mind welling as he wondered when she had the time to put them on. Then his eyes turned to her face. Gone was her cold mask of indifference. Wild passion blazed in its place. Something stirred within Tang Wulin. His heart trembled. His blood boiled. He gave into the whirlwind. Tang Wulin and Gu Yue's dance attracted the attention of everyone around them. They were a storm on the dance floor, spinning back and forth to the music, until suddenly, Gu Yue stopped. Tang Wulin stopped with her, and she jumped off his slider into the air only to float back down like a leaf. She lighted upon his shoulder, spun in place, and became still staring back at all the onlookers. At that moment, they had every set of eyes in the hall on them. Gu Yue flipped in place, falling forward only to catch herself and hang upside down from Tang Wulin's shoulders. With the grace of a snake, she slid around his body and down to the ground in one smooth motion, and they were back in their original dancing positions. She then leaned backward, her body angling so far it seemed as though it would break from the strain. The motion pulled Tang Wulin along as her hands were hooked around his neck. Just when it seemed like she would touch the ground, she kicked her feet into the air and wrapped her legs around Tang Wulin's neck. This mesmerizing performance moved in complete sync with the music, each of Gu Yue's acrobatic movements matching the thumping beat. Not once did Tang Wulin's hand leave her waist. "Throw me," Gu Yue whispered in his ear. Without another thought, Tang Wulin gripped her waist tight and flung her up. Gu Yue soared upward, traveling nearly 30 meters into the air to nearly touch the ceiling of the hall. She spun the entire time, contorting her body to perform miraculous aerial acrobatics. Then, as her rise slowly transitioned back into a fall, her dress caught the air around it and transformed into a blooming silver flower. The other dancers had long since stopped to pay full attention to this spectacle. As Gu Yue fell toward him, Tang Wulin reached out and wrapped his hand around her waist, catching her and setting her back on the ground in one smooth motion. Gu Yue didn't stop there, however, immediately grabbing his hand and twirling around him. All Tang Wulin could do was react to Gu Yue as she led him with pulls and subtle physical cues, but still he matched her perfectly. From beginning to end he was staring into her eyes. At first he had been bewildered, then he was amazed. Everything she did aroused excitement within him, gave birth to a blazing passion. Gu Yue's dance was simply dazzling. Her beautiful figure, slender legs, and slim waist charmed everyone present. Although she did not possess the appeal of a mature woman, she was bursting with the energy of youth. Her whirlwind of a dance was both graceful and grand. She was a fairy frolicking around Tang Wulin in perfect harmony with the music. Then, right as the song came to an end, she spun into Tang Wulin's embrace, nestling her head in his chest. She slowly looked up at him to reveal a faint smile. Not a trace of her previous bitterness could be found. As she gazed at him, she placed a tender hand on his cheek. The two stared into each other's eyes with heart-melting warmth. Then the moment was over, and Gu Yue slowly pulled away from Tang Wulin. Her gaze lingered on his face. Then she turned to face their audience. As soon as she did, a resounding applause erupted throughout the entire banquet hall. Whistles and cheers quickly joined the cacophony as the room bubbled over with excitement. Gu Yue turned to Tang Wulin and adjusted his bow tie, then leaned in close and whispered, "If you want to learn how to dance, I'm more than capable of teaching you. The next time you dance with another girl, You'll what?" Tang Wulin asked, placing his hands on his waist. Gu Yue's eyes met his with unwavering resolve. A smile formed on her lips. "I'll break her legs." Tang Wulin stared at her in stunned silence. Gu Yue grabbed his hand and led him off the dance floor back to their friends like a proud peacock. Xu Shaoan ran up to them as they approached. "Wow. Big sis Yue, you're too cool." She jumped at Gu Yue and hugged her. "Teach me how to dance, Du. You'll teach me, right?" Gu Yue smiled and nodded. Yuan and Yui stared at Tang Wulin with a strange expression. Gu Yue was right. Some people need to be kept on a tight leash. Damn right. Shishi chimed in. "Some people are just too spoiled." Tang Wulin raised an eyebrow. "Don't you think dancing is beautiful, Shishi? If a man can dance well, they'll definitely attract countless girls." Shishi was taken aback by the idea, and he cast a furtive glance at Yuan and Yui. He remembered how entranced she had been as she watched Tang Wulin and Gu Yue dance, the trace of envy that had flickered in her eyes. He turned back to Tang Wulin and said, "What are you getting at? Are you volunteering to teach me? You don't seem to be much of a dancer yourself." PSH. "Practice makes perfect," Tang Wulin replied. "If you don't give it a try, how are you ever going to learn? Besides, you're an agility type. I'm sure you'll pick it up quickly. Come on, I'll teach you." "Isn't it kinda weird for two guys to dance with each other?" Shishi asked. He seemed hesitant, but he still walked over to Tang Wulin. "Will learning to dance earn me some points with Yuanan?" Tang Wulin grabbed Shishi by the shoulder and led him onto the dance floor. Xu Shaoan glanced at Gu Yue curiously. "What's Captain up to? Does he actually like dancing that much?" "No," Gu Yue said softly. "I think he's acting like this because of what I told him just now. I said that if he dances with anyone else, I'll break their legs." "Oh." Xu Shaoan's eyes went wide as saucers. "Captain's just too much. How can he be so two-faced? I feel sorry for Shishi." Yuan and Yui shook her head helplessly. She couldn't help but laugh at the situation. In the end, Tang Wulin and Shishi didn't dance together because the contests began. Tang Wulin was picked as Douluo's candidate for Best Dressed Gentleman, Prince of the Ball, and Best Dance Couple alongside Gu Yue. He won the nominations immediately. For the last one, although his dance skills were nothing to talk about, he had been Gu Yue's dance partner and she was phenomenal. Surprisingly enough, despite having hid in the corner the entire time, Wu Zhangkong was also nominated for Best Dressed Man and Prince of the Ball. Never did Tang Wulin imagine he would be directly competing with his teacher. Chapter 567, Into the Sea. Wu Zhangkong wasn't Tang Wulin's only competitor for Prince of the Ball and Best Dressed Man. So was Yue's Hengyu. In fact, Shrek Academy yielded several nominations for different categories. Best Dressed Lady, for example, flaunted the elegant styles of Gu Yue and Xu Shaoan. As for Belle of the Ball, Gu Yue, Xu Shaoan, Yu Xinglan, and the non-Shrek Lin Yuhan all made the cut. Gu Yue's dance in particular had been so enchanting that her relatively average physical appearance seemed less so. It made her popular with the crowd. The voting came as quickly as it went. In the end, Tang Wulin was crowned the Best Dressed Gentleman, and he and Gu Yue won Best Dance Couple. Surprisingly enough, Gu Yue also won Best Dressed Lady. On the other hand, that the Ice Prince Wu Zhangkong won Most Handsome Man was hardly shocking, and a young girl from Douluo snatched away the win for the Most Beautiful Woman contest. Tang Wulin noticed a hint of embarrassment on Wu Zhangkong's face as he ascended the stage to accept his reward. Even for the dashing Wu Zhangkong, it was his first time experiencing this type of limelight. If not for Alakai's presence, he would have refused to go up. The awards themselves weren't too flashy, merely some local specialties of the Douluo Empire, but the contest had achieved its purpose. The two delegations were much more at ease with each other now. "Your dance was amazing," Lin Yuhan said as she greeted Gu Yue. "Congratulations on your award." A thin smile formed on Gu Yue's lips. "You were pretty good too." They locked stares. Sparks flew. Lin Yuhan turned to Tang Wulin. "Wulin, do you have any free time tomorrow? If yes, want to give me some blacksmithing tips? We can hammer some metal in the blacksmithing workshop on board." Just as Tang Wulin was about to answer, he felt a sharp pain at his waist. He coughed awkwardly. Think I'll be busy tomorrow. I gotta cultivate and do some other stuff. Another day maybe." "Okay. I'm in room 521. You can call me through the internal comms line." While aboard the ship, there was no reception for sole communicators. They could only call each other through the hardwired lines. "Okay." Although unsatisfied with the outcome, Lin Yuhan bid them a short goodbye and left. When she was finally out of sight, Gu Yue removed her fingers from Tang Wulin's waist. Tang Wulin glanced at Gu Yue just as she did the same. A pause, but their gazes did not falter. "Damn, did someone spill some vinegar? It's getting real sour around here," Yue's Hengyu said as he approached the two, sending a smirk Gu Yue's way. Gu Yue quickly separated from Tang Wulin. She sent a glare Yue's Hengyu's way, sharp enough to cut. Regrouping, they enjoyed the rest of the banquet's performances. In the end, the banquet was an overwhelming success. The members of both delegations were much friendlier towards each other, which was great since there were diplomatic representatives from every profession, and naturally quite a few high-ranking members of the military as well. A while back, Wu Zhangkong had mentioned to Tang Wulin both delegations possessed quite a few powerful mecha pilots and battle armor masters. Most of those powerhouses came as representatives of academies. After his contact with the Imperial Sun Moon Academy, Tang Wulin could tell that they were strong. However, even with an age advantage, they might not necessarily match up to his team. It was unfortunate, to say so the least, but he wouldn't have a chance to probe their strength any further. Back at his cabin, Tang Wulin carefully undressed from the clothes Gu Yue had given him, smoothing out the wrinkles and hanging them neatly in his closet. The vivid image of Gu Yue's lithe body performing her wild and passionate dance popped into his mind. Never had he seen such a side to her before. He found it enchanting, as did everyone else at the banquet. Her dance would be forever etched into his memory. After changing into his usual clothes, Tang Wulin felt much more at ease without anything constricting his neck. He pushed open the door to the balcony and let the sea breeze in. His heart relaxed as it brushed against his skin. Tang Wulin took in a deep breath and looked up at the evening sky. Clouds obscured the stars and moon, leaving the sea shrouded in darkness. He could hear the faint sound of waves tumbling along and crashing into the ship's hull. A peaceful song to calm the soul. The world really is amazing. Tang Wulin felt felt glad that he had come on this exchange trip. Although his trip was just beginning, he had already gained so many new experiences he never would have dreamed of. He placed a foot past the doorway and onto the balcony. He swept his other foot through. Tang Wuling continued on his stroll, ending it to lean on the balcony railing. His eyes flashed purple with the power of purple demon eyes, peering into the watery depths. With the light pass from the ship, he could make out as far as a dozen meters deep. Back in class, he had learned that the ocean covered roughly 70% of their spherical planet. He found this concept interesting and wondered what other planets apart from Douluo existed. The field of astronomy was fledgling, and scientists were only beginning to peer into the unknown of space with telescopes in recent years. Unfortunately, Tang Wuling had no time to spare to satisfy his interest in astronomy, with the burden of cultivation taking up the majority of his time. As thoughts meandered through Tang Wuling's mind, he felt a sudden pressure on his neck and found himself flying through the air the next instant. Oh shit. His instinct screamed in alarm, and he urged his soul power forth, but he found a mysterious energy enveloping him and cutting off the flow of his soul power. This time, he urged his blood essence to resist, but the force on the nape of his neck sent pain coursing through him that beat down any attempt at resistance. Tang Wuling's numerous brushes with death prepared him for this crisis. Instantly, he calmed his mind. He steadily coaxed his soul power and blood essence to circulate within him and waited for an opportunity to escape, bracing for impact. A loud splash. The frigid water surrounded him as he continued to be dragged deeper underneath the surface. He sank like a stone, his high body density proving to be his downfall. The sea devoured the light around him. Unable to breathe, Tang Wuling mustered all his willpower to hold his breath and break free from the hand's iron grip. But it was to no avail. His vision grew dark and his soul power and blood essence slowly churned to a halt. His lungs burned with desire for air while the immense pressure of the ocean depths crushed him from all sides. Am I going to die? Tang Wuling didn't know who he had offended, but if there was anything he knew, it was that his attacker was far more powerful than him. The gap in strength was so great that any resistance was futile. Pretty soon, the water pressure released the remaining thin air in his lungs. Pain built up within him, so much that he could feel it in his flesh, his bones, could feel it in his being. His blood essence worked in overdrive to endure the burden, but it only delayed the inevitable. No, not like this. I can't die yet. His eyes burst open underwater. Blood essence whipped into a frenzy. From his body a golden aura erupting. Tang Wuling activated Golden Dragon Body. Gone was the sharp pain from his neck. With the power of the Golden Dragon King unleashed, he could endure the water pressure. Scales rippled across the right side of his upper body. He thrust his elbows backward while urging his blood essence to flow in reverse. From his elbows unleashed Golden Dragon shocks the heavens. In the same instant, he used Golden Dragon Tyrant Body. His figure flashed iridescent. He needed an opportunity, a single opportunity to break free. Tang Wuling angled his neck, facing the water surface. The ship was still cruising along above him. As long as he could reach the surface, at least one of the numerous powerful people on this diplomatic exchange would discover him and send help. He struck his attacker with his elbows and cried out, the water muffling his voice. It felt as if he had struck a hard metal plate instead. If not for his tough body, Tang Wuling's bones would have shattered into pieces. The hand on his neck pressed down with renewed strength. Luckily for him, Golden Dragon Tyrant Body was still in effect and absorbed all of the transmitted force, converting it into energy. It was his chance. He took advantage of the recoil of Golden Dragon shocks the heavens to finally break free of the vice-like grip. Slashed his attacker with Golden Dragon Dreadclaw, unleashing 5 dark gold streaks of energy. This Golden Dragon Dreadclaw combined with a fully charged Golden Dragon Tyrant Body was the most powerful attack he could currently unleash. As Tang Wuling tracked the course of his attack, he finally saw his attacker, a man swathed in a dark gold aura. Chapter 568, Death's Door. If there was one thing Tang Wuling was confident in, it was the might of his Golden Dragon Dreadclaw. Empowered by his blood essence, the ability of the Soulbone was undoubtedly the strongest attack in his arsenal. The instant he unleashed it, all the energy his Golden Dragon Tyrant Body stored up, as well as a third of his blood essence. He was confident that this attack would pose a threat to even a 5-ring Soul King, but to his shock, his attacker showed no intent to evade. The 5 dark gold blades of energy crashed into the man and instantly shattered into oblivion. The man's body, which shone dark gold like a temple, was untouched. Before Tang Wuling could react, the man grabbed him by the throat. This time, he suppressed all of Tang Wuling's soul power and blood essence. Tang Wuling's eyes quivered as he stared at the man through the dark waters. He's fine. Completely unscathed. Even against my fully powered Dreadclaw, both Tang Wuling's mind and body were numb. He knew there was no hope for him. This man was not an existence he could even grovel at the feet of. As the sea's crushing pressure grew stronger and stronger, Tang Wuling's internal organs quickly sustained damage, a process that was only intensified by his outburst of power. A warm haze enveloped his mind. His consciousness began to fade. Scales still covered the right side of his torso. His blood essence struggled to keep him alive. However, it was being thoroughly suppressed by the man's grip. A bitter smile traced its way on Tang Wuling's mouth. It's over, huh? I never thought I'd die in the sea like this. Maybe I'll become dinner for some marine soul beast. Just some more nutrients for the sea. Tang Wuling's vision faded to black. He couldn't even see the golden man right in front of him. The tension drained from his limbs and began to float freely. He saw a tunnel shrouded in darkness before him. A tempting voice called to him from beyond it. However, right before he could cross the threshold, the pressure around his neck disappeared. In his 11th hour, Tang Wuling's blood essence roared to life. His body burst with power. His blood essence flowed in reverse, and the fog in his mind cleared up. Tang Wuling blinked, eyes flickering as his vision returned to normal. He groggily scanned the water and managed to catch sight of his attacker jetting up to the surface. He, himself, continued to sink. Tang Wuling was sorely in need of oxygen, but adrenaline was pumping through him now. He bit his tongue, using the sharp pain to clear away the last of the cloudiness in his mind. Did he think I was dead? If he really thinks I'm dead, then this is my chance. Tang Wuling didn't immediately swim for the surface. Instead, he waved his arms in circles to stop his descent and steady himself in the water. He had to wait for his attacker to go farther away before he acted. He couldn't his attacker discovering him and returning to finish him off. 10 seconds later, Tang Wuling's body ached with excruciating pain. He was on the verge of hallucinating again, so he bit his tongue to clear his head once more. He simply couldn't wait any longer. An ordinary person would have long since died from lack of oxygen and the immense pressure this deep in the sea. However, the Golden Dragon King's bloodline granted Tang Wuling's body a godly level of tenacity. This crisis pushed his body to its absolute limit. Tang Wuling was straddling the line between life and death. Wielding a miraculous burst of strength, he filled his arms with all the soul power he had left and desperately swam for the surface. Having grown up in a seaside town, Tang Wuling was a skilled swimmer. Furthermore, he was even more buoyant in salt water. By circulating his soul power to make his body lighter as well, he rapidly floated to the surface. As he did, the crushing influence of the water around him began to take effect once more. His vision blurred yet again. On top of that, his body still craved oxygen. Tang Wuling gritted his teeth. My life is on the line. No matter what, I have to endure. In the sea, darkness surrounded Tang Wuling on all sides. He couldn't even see how far the surface was on this moonless night. All he could do was persevere and continue swimming upward. As time wore on, Tang Wuling's blood essence churned slower and slower. His limbs grew as heavy as lead. It was a struggle for him to even lift his arm up and pull himself toward the surface. The water pressure decreased as he ascended, but his movement still became slower. It didn't seem to matter how much he swam. The distance between him and the surface was virtually endless. Then his body trembled and seized up. He began to spasm. He had no more oxygen to burn. The weight returned to his body. He started sinking once more. No. Tang Wuling screamed in his heart. A wave of clarity flooded his mind, and he felt another burst of strength flooding from deep within him. The 14 remaining Golden Dragon King seals quivered and squeezed out all of the strength hidden inside of him. A golden aura enveloped Tang Wuling and relieved the pain in his gut. With this newfound strength, he clad his arms in golden scales and clawed toward the surface with renewed vigor. He was practically soaring through the water. He flailed and kicked toward the surface. He knew this would be his dying spurt of energy. If it was, he had to make use of it. This was his last chance at survival. The flood of strength waned quickly. It was nearly impossible for him to refrain from trying to gasp for breath. This can't be the end. It can't. Tang Wuling roared in his heart. Against all odds, he summoned yet another burst of strength and swam even faster. Moments later, he broke the surface with a loud splash. Before he could catch his breath, however, a large wave washed over him and sent him under. He resurfaced in an instant, gasping for breath. He inhaled with such force that it seemed like a veritable gust of wind was being drawn into his mouth. Air surged into his lungs and quickly spread to the rest of his body. Tang Wulin's limbs and organs continued to scream in pain. The sudden ascent from several hundred meters deep in the sea gave him a bad case of decompression sickness. Furthermore, the sudden influx of air only increased the pain. Tang Wulin slowly treaded water until he could move into a starfish position and float on the surface of the sea. As he sucked in huge breaths of air, he circulated his blood essence to try and recover. This was truly Tang Wulin's closest brush with death. All he could do now was limply float on the water. Pain stabbed at every inch of his body. It felt like he was being torn apart and remade again each and every moment. But still, he smiled. Pain was proof that he still lived. Soon enough, Tang Wulin's tenacious body was in good enough shape for his blood essence to settle into a smooth flow. With each round of its circulation, the pain tormenting him grew weaker. As he stared up at the cloudy, moonless sky, Tang Wulin couldn't help but laugh hysterically. It looks like I didn't spend my years eating all that food for nothing. It's thanks to my powerful blood essence that I'm still alive. While Tang Wulin had survived drowning, he knew that his crisis wasn't over. The ship had already traveled quite far, and if he couldn't catch up, he would be stranded in the middle of the sea. By then, he would be fated to succumb to fatigue and die. Tang Wulin shifted his weight forward and began to sluggishly tread water. He looked around him, and a bitter smile formed on his face. The two ships were nowhere to be seen. Even if he'd been able to see them, he wasn't confident that he would be able to catch up to them in his current state. It would be impossible for him to swim fast enough to catch up to such large ships. Am I really destined to die in the sea after all? It took a huge amount of effort for Tang Wulin to stay afloat because of how extremely dense his body was. Simply doing that was making him more and more tired. At this rate, fatigue was sure to catch up to him and drag him down to a watery death. Just as Tang Wulin was about to resign himself to his fate, he caught a glimpse of dark gold flickering in the distance. His eyes went wide at the sight. Chapter 569, The Body Sex Cultivation Method. The figure of the man cloaked in dark gold light trod slowly across the water's surface. His destination, Tang Wulin. Shit. It's that guy. Tang Wulin's blood went cold. Now that he could see the man clearly, his imposing appearance struck his heart. At around 2.5 meters tall, the man's stature surpassed humanity's limits, and his metallic dark gold aura only added to the striking image. I'm finished. Who are you? Can't you at least tell me whose hands I'm going to die by? Tang Wulin croaked out. The man disappeared in a flicker of motion, reappearing right in front of Tang Wulin. He lifted the boy out of the water. Now that he no longer needed to stay afloat, Tang Wulin felt his body give into fatigue. The next instant, the two took off into the air at max speed. Huh? Isn't he going to kill me? Why hasn't he whacked me yet? Tang Wulin blinked a few times in confusion. A few seconds later, the two ships entered his sights. He narrowed his eyes and conserved his strength, waiting for an opportunity to escape as they approached the ships. However, before Tang Wulin was fully ready, the man of dark gold accelerated. To the naked eye they turned into a streak in the sky, piercing through powerful winds as they flew. A blink, and Tang Wulin found his feet back on solid ground. Exhaustion caught up with him. He collapsed. While prone, Tang Wulin gently caressed the ground and spoke sweet nothings to it, finally appreciating solid ground for once in his life. Even if this wasn't land per se, but the floorboards of a ship, he was overjoyed to be able to stand on something. After a moment of rejoicing, Tang Wulin looked up and realized where he was specifically. The cabin of his balcony. The man swathed in dark gold stood before him. As his shimmering metallic aura faded, it revealed a face all too familiar to Tang Wulin. What? Tang Wulin stared at the man, dumbstruck, his eyes on the verge of popping. He blinked a few times, then surrendered to his fatigue. The man was Niu Yi. He bent down to swoop Tang Wulin into his arms, on his lips the hint of a wry smile. He brought the boy back into his cabin, stripped off his wet clothes, and placed him on the bed. It looks like my decision was correct, Niu Yi said, traces of admiration in his voice. It was all his idea, Niu Yi's idea. He was the one who had abducted Tang Wulin and tossed him into the deep, dark ocean. He had known about Tang Wulin's high body density and mass beforehand, but he hadn't expected Tang Wulin to do what he did, to momentarily throw him off deep under the sea. Rather than a gap, a wide chasm separated their cultivation levels. Yet Tang Wulin had achieved what was virtually impossible. Niu Yi had, according to plan, released the boy at a depth that would pose the greatest challenge to Tang Wulin while still maintaining a shred of consciousness. He had meticulously calculated this. It had all been for the sake of testing Tang Wulin's tenacity and willpower. Years ago, Niu Yi had also endured this same trial. He remembered ascending no more than 30 meters before he could no longer continue. Throughout the trial, Niu Yi had positioned his red-grade mecha nearby to monitor Tang Wulin. The instant Tang Wulin's vital signs went critical, the mecha would have swooped in and rescued him. When Niu Yi had first reached the water's surface and observed Tang Wulin through his mecha, he was shocked to find the boy remaining motionless. At first, he thought that Tang Wulin had already lost consciousness. But as he observed closer, he noticed that rather than sinking, Tang Wulin was slowly waving his arms about to keep himself stationary. It was only when he was on the verge of death that he had shot toward the surface. This action did not escape Niu Yi's understanding. Tang Wulin had been biding his time, waiting for his attacker to increase their shared distance before grasping his opportunity to escape. The ability to remain so calm in the face of death shook Niu Yi's very bones. He had watched silently as Tang Wulin ascended 500 meters from the starting position, surpassing his personal record. Then Tang Wulin's organs began to fail. Before Niu Yi could react, a golden aura burst from his body and he accelerated. Not long after, his body shut down once more before he accelerated again. Niu Yi's jaw had dropped lower and lower each time Tang Wulin surpassed his limits. He could hardly believe his eyes when Tang Wulin finally pierced through the surface of the water. In the history of the body sect, the only person who had accomplished this feat before was its founder. The founder had been trapped under the sea by enemies, which led to his martial soul's secondary awakening. With his already powerful body martial soul strengthened, he managed to escape the watery jaws of death. Since then, the body sect had adopted this life and death crisis as a trial for all new members. How far they managed to ascend would determine their acceptance into the sect, would serve as a marker for their talent. Tang Wulin was undoubtedly a godly talent, not just in terms of his physical abilities, but in his willpower as well. Although the body sect has existed even longer than the Tang sect, they were never able to grow as great as the latter. A large part of this was due to the savage nature of their cultivation methods. Disciples of the body sect needed an immense amount of willpower to endure the torturous training. Without such willpower, they would never be able to persevere and inherit the legacies of the sect. Niu Yi thrust his palm into Tang Wulin's chest, and in response, Tang Wulin shuddered. Then Niu Yi rapidly slapped Tang Wulin's chest dozens of times in the next few seconds. A golden aura enveloped Niu Yi's hands with every slap, each imparting a wisp of golden energy into Tang Wulin's body, each causing his unconscious body to quiver. The golden aura darkened, and so did the energy infused into him. A network of golden lines rose to the surface of his skin to give off a faint glow. They bore a slight resemblance to his scales, except these lines covered his entire body. Tang Wulin's quivering slowly settled down as time passed, until they could only be described as subtle twitching. He's even better than I thought. This kid has the most powerful blood essence I've ever seen. It was worth it to take him in even if I have to share. While unconscious, Tang Wulin felt as if he had entered a giant furnace and was being baked alive. His blood vessels were bursting as blood surged through them, circulating a scorching type of heat, one that made him desire both life and death at the same time. The pain eventually subsided and Tang Wulin dove into a deep slumber. At the sound of knocking on his door, Tang Wulin slowly opened his eyes. He was completely drained of strength and could barely open his mouth as he lay there. Who is it? Captain, it's time to eat. Tang Wulin bolted upright the moment he heard those words. No matter how battered and fatigued he felt, food was worth enduring the pain. He did not think with his brain, but his stomach. He hopped off his bed and approached the door, catching a glimpse of himself in the mirror, naked. He was completely naked. Right there, that was his shiny butt, and over there were his other bits. Last night's brush with death suddenly burst into mind. The images bright and vivid. He glanced at the balcony door. It was shut. Was it all a dream? No way. That felt too real to have been a dream. Give me a minute. I'll be out right away. Tang Wulin quickly washed his face, but didn't have the strength to lift up his toothbrush. His entire body felt like jelly. After throwing on some clothes, he left his room and was greeted by his friends. What's with you? Gu Yue asked. Yeah. Captain, why are you so pale? Shishi asked, shocked. You okay? Tang Wulin truly cut a haggard figure. Dark bags dripped under his eyes, and his skin was as pale as the dead. He even moved as if he were dead too, sluggishly and without any grace. There was not a hint of energy in his usually brilliant eyes. It's nothing. I just ran into some trouble cultivating last night, so I don't feel that well right now. Let's get going. He walked over to Shu Lizzie, slinging his arm around his friend's shoulders, his hunger apparent from his gaze. I'm starving. Lizzie, can you give me some buns to tide me over first? Gu Yue's expression loosened a bit when she saw Tang Wulin's typical action. She snuck over to Tang Wulin's side and whispered, "Boss, don't tell me you were having trouble sleeping last night after seeing Gu Yue's dance. It's not good to have too many delusions, you know?" Although Tang Wulin itched to toss Shishi overboard that instant, he lacked the strength. All he could do was send a sharp look his teammate's way. Chapter 570, Supplements. Looks like I was wrong to judge a book by its cover. Shu Lizzie exclaimed, wiggling his eyebrows. Then with an incantation, he conjured some pork buns for Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin devoured them in a few bites. He stuck his hand out again for more. This scene repeated until they reached the dining hall on the third floor, and by then Tang Wulin had eaten nearly 20 buns. The effect of the recovery pork buns was incredible. Tang Wulin no longer felt fatigued, a hint of color finally on his cheeks. The dining hall on the ship stretched far and wide, a necessity to accommodate over 1,000 passengers eating at once. Every sort of cuisine was available, more than the slim selection offered at the banquet. Cold dishes, congee, eggs cooked in every way, and numerous seafood dishes were arranged along the tables. Tang Wulin's friends made a choice not to sit at the same table as him. They'd learned from the past. It was still early in the morning, so only a third of the tables were currently filled. After finding a table in the corner, Tang Wulin immediately grabbed 6 eggs off a platter and stuffed them in his mouth. A moment later, he heard a rustle at his side. Turning, he saw Lin Yuhan. Wulin, what are you doing here all alone? Lin Yuhan glanced at the group of Shrek Academy students sitting at the next table, her gaze lingering on Gu Yue especially long before returning to Tang Wulin. He grunted in acknowledgement of her, but he was too focused on eating to give a full reply. Without the slightest pause, he continued gorging himself. At the neighboring table, Xu Shaoan nudged Gu Yue. "Big sis Yue, look," she said, signaling with her eyes toward her captain. Naturally, Gu Yue saw Lin Yuhan talking to Tang Wulin as well. However, she simply revealed an amused smile, watched them without interfering. 10 minutes later, horror-colored Lin Yuhan's face, her mouth hanging open. "Why, you sure can eat a lot." She couldn't help but stare as Tang Wulin inhaled food like a vacuum. His table manners left much to be desired as he wolfed down plate after plate of food. In a couple of minutes, he already finished 2/3 of the food on the table. But that didn't mean he would ignore her. Ever the gentleman, Tang Wulin grunted again in response, but not bothering to utter a single word as he continued stuffing his face. He found that the more food he consumed, the quicker he regained his strength. Sure enough, the best way to recover his blood essence was with food. Unfortunately for him, the food on the ship wasn't the most nutritious. About average if anything. Lin Yuhan swallowed nervously. "I'll go and eat now too." Seeing that Tang Wulin wasn't paying attention to her, and shocked by the full extent of his gluttony, she quickly retreated. Was she scared off? Xu Shaoan asked, finally beginning to understand why Gu Yue hadn't bothered to lift a finger. A Tang Wulin during mealtime had tunnel vision. Any attempt to communicate with him proved futile. "Eat this," sounded a voice by Tang Wulin's side. Then a large tray was placed down in front of him. Arranged on the tray were fillets of dark blue meat. He counted at least 2. Tang Wulin raised his head to see who it was, and his eyes popped. "Huh? Isn't this Mu Yi?" All his doubts from the morning were cleared now. He had indeed nearly drowned the night before at Mu Yi's hands. Yet rather than feeling alarmed, Tang Wulin was certain that Mu Yi had a reason for what he had done. Still, rather than immediately begin devouring the food Mu Yi had brought like he did normally, Tang Wulin cast a cautious look at the chef. "What is this? Don't think I forgot the pain you put me through last night. I had nightmares because of it." Mu Yi gestured to the dish. "This is 1,000-year bluefin tuna. Its fat is top-notch and very good for your body. I managed to catch it last night. Go on and eat." "I still have more." Tang Wulin glanced at the bluefish flesh. It was clearly fresh and untampered with, and quite appetizing to look at. He carefully poked it with his fork, watching as flakes fell off with a slight brush. Lifted a piece into his mouth and slowly bit into it, playing with it with his tongue. To his surprise, the piece of meat had not a hint of a fishy taste. Quite the delicate flavor, in fact. After chewing a few times and swallowing, Tang Wulin felt a warmth permeate through his body and set him at ease. This is good stuff. Tang Wulin's eyes lit up. In his weakened state, what he needed most was nutritious food to restore his energy. Any thoughts of caution were thrown to the wind and he began hungrily devouring the fish. By the time Tang Wulin had finished the fish, Mu Yi brought over another platter. A giant fish head half a meter in diameter sat on top of it. It was roasted to a golden brown, its skin glistening with melted fats. Compared to the previous dish, this one had a stronger fragrance, so much that it drew the attention of surrounding people. Tang Wulin didn't hesitate and immediately speared the neck region with his fork, twisting the utensil deeper to tear off more manageable pieces of meat. The neck meat tasted heavier than the previous fillet, and felt more tender too. As he ate, his belly felt warmer and warmer, as if his insides were catching fire. Yet the intense heat granted a sense of comfort. "Chef, what's he eating? How come there's none of that at our table?" asked a man at a neighboring table. Mu Yi crossed his arms and looked sternly at him. "They caught the fish themselves and gave it to me to cook. If you have fish, I'll cook it for you too. How could you have fished it on this giant ship?" The man glanced at Tang Wulin, baffled, but before he could speak, Mu Yi had already left. Almost 20 minutes later, Tang Wulin picked the entire fish head clean. Now his entire body was brimming with energy, and he felt a faint itch in his muscles and bones. He rose from his seat and approached his friends sitting just one table away. "I'm heading back first. If you need me, just give me a call." On this long cruise, none of them had any particular plans. The only activity that was a given was cultivation, so he'd most likely be in his cabin. When he returned to his cabin, Tang Wulin studied himself in the mirror. He gasped. His skin was incredibly scarlet. Tang Wulin made a beeline for his bed to mediate and adjust his internal energies, now aware of the degree of heat within him. Steam rose from his body as he relished in this comforting heat. As it washed away the pain that had made his body its home, the clock ticked on, and his head began to droop. He soon succumbed to drowsiness. While he was asleep, his blood essence flowed through his meridians, reaching every corner of his body. A golden veined pattern rose to the surface of his skin, far brilliant than ever before. With each breath, his blood essence surged. When Tang Wulin awoke, his room was dark and the sun had set beyond the horizon. He climbed off his bed and rubbed his drowsy eyes, stretching his stiff body and taking pleasure from the succession of cracks. He let out a satisfied groan. Now fully awake, Tang Wulin managed to open his eyes wide and took a moment to decide on his plans. Then he left his cabin and knocked on Gu Yue's door. "Oh, you're up?" Gu Yue was slightly surprised at the bright-eyed Tang Wulin. He was back to his usual self now, bursting with energy. "Yep. Why didn't you call me for lunch? Jeez. All you know is how to eat. And I did call you, but you were dead asleep and didn't respond at all. I couldn't get into your room either. I had to jump over to your balcony in order to check up on you. Seeing your happy sleeping face, I thought it would be better not to disturb you." "Really? Just what were you up to last night? Why were you so tired?" Tang Wulin strained a smile and shook his head. There was no way he could explain what had happened with Mu Yi. "I was just tired from cultivating, but don't worry. I'm fine now. Well, let's go grab dinner." Gu Yue stared at him in silence before sighing and going along with him. Nothing special happened during dinner and Mu Yi did not appear. Furthermore, Tang Wulin was surprised to find his appetite smaller than usual and only ate about 8 people's worth before he was full. Perhaps his body was too stocked full of nutrients. "What are you guys gonna do after dinner?" Tang Wulin asked his friends. "I'm going to go practice mecha designing," Gu Yue said. "Making battle armor here," Yu Xinglin said. Yu Zhengyu shrugged. "I think I'll go for a stroll." Xu Shaoan and Yuan and Yui decided to return to their rooms to cultivate while she planned on cultivating in one of the specialized cultivation rooms on board. Tang Wulin nodded after hearing their plans. "All right. Let's all head back and do what we gotta do." Although he was worried about his own cultivation, he could only press on with cultivating and pay attention to any changes within himself. The moment Tang Wulin returned to his room, his balcony door swung open. In walked Mu Yi. With a wave of his hand, Mu Yi enveloped the room in an aura of dark gold. "W, what are you doing?" Tang Wulin cried out. "How are you feeling?" Mu Yi asked. Tang Wulin blinked a few times before slowly answering. "What do you mean, how am I feeling? Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.